Let's start reading at verse 10 for just a few verses. We won't get the whole letter read, but it said, I appeal to you for my child Onesimus, who I've begotten in my imprisonment, who formerly was useless to you, but now is useful both to you and me. I have sent him back to you in person, that is, sending my very heart, whom I wish to keep with me, so that on your behalf he might minister to me in my imprisonment for the gospel. But without your consent I did not want to do anything, so that your goodness would not be in effect by compulsion, but of your own free will. For perhaps he was for this reason separated from you for a while, that you would have him back forever, no longer as a slave, but more than a slave, a beloved brother, especially to me, and how much more to you, both in the flesh and the Lord. Now you can go on and read a little bit more there. The letter's pretty easy just to look over. We're going to be talking about that. And our idea is when the unexpected happens, and I would tell you that's what happened to Philemon as Onesimus came back bringing this letter from Paul. It was unexpected. And when we practice our faith, sometimes things get a little bit complicated. Sometimes things do surprise us, and I think we do prefer the uncomplicated. We like it when the Bible stories are interesting Bible stories and they're fun Bible class discussions, but they pretty much stay within the content of the abstract, the theoretical, and that which we just look at and discuss. But now and then, of course, it enters the big middle of your life and you have to actually literally do something with it. And I think Philemon is in a difficult situation here now. He has a runaway slave who's come back to him. And back in that day, he had several options. He could have had him tied to a post and beat in an effort to discipline him a little bit, but more in an effort to discourage any other slaves from running away. Or he could have sold him into another level of slavery, a harsher place, which would have been like a slow death sentence if he'd wanted to. Or he could outright have him executed. Those were all the options that he had on the table back in that day. And so he's in a difficult situation as he tries to manage his estate and how this is going to affect the other things. So what Paul does is he writes, and he's hoping for some healing and some actual reconciliation and, a better picture going forward. So he's got a choice. He can say he's Christian in abstract principle. He can say the right words at the right time. Or now he gets a chance to practice loving like Christ loved and doing things that are not logical. They're not the culture of the day, and yet they are obviously the will of God and the will of Christ. So this is about when our faith touches our wounds, when our faith weaves through things that are really difficult and we have to make some real choices. So I'm going to start by asking, does our faith live safely in the abstract? Or do we bring her right into the middle of the complicated things of life? Now, if we're truly Christian, we do the latter. We do bring it in. We're not going to say we always do it wisely and perfectly. Now we know he's family. But his faith still needs his past still needs some attention. It's kind of like you see this in a movie now and then or something along that line. Somebody breaks out of jail. And in the course of their being out of jail, they get baptized and saved. And they're like, okay, I'm free now, right? No. Authorities catch up with you, you're still going back to jail. Your past still has to be addressed. Just because God forgives us and we become part of the family of Christ doesn't mean those things that are trailing behind us are all over and done. We still have to do the responsible thing. So Paul just goes straight to the issue. He doesn't dance around. It doesn't hem-haw around. I mean, in your Bible, in my Bible anyway, and I have a little larger print edition, the whole thing's on one single page. Now, maybe in his handwriting it was the front and back of a page, but it didn't take a whole lot of room. And Paul, they could just decide to go along to get along, and they could play the game and tolerate one another. But what Paul's looking for is real reconciliation, not just a legal agreement, where they come to terms and they have kind of a contract of some sort. This is Christian family. Now, Philemon's still going to be the boss, and I know that kind of puzzles our mind. Slavery was part of the day. And some people chose slavery. Let me say it in modern terms. Some people chose slavery as their career. Now, to you and I, when I say that, we think too much of the horrible slavery we had here in the South in the 1800s. That's not what slavery is. The question is, what will Philemon do? And interestingly enough, God never gives us that answer. We don't know what choice he made when all was said and done. We know the letter was written, and Onesimus is heading back that way. Now, what did Philemon say when Onesimus walked through the door? I have no idea. So Paul makes his appeal. Love is the better way to go than force. Now, there's a time for force. I wouldn't argue that. So when you're dealing with youngsters who really don't quite understand logic, I think it's fine for parents to use logic and teach a child logic if they want to. And I personally kind of stand with the Proverbs, think if you spoil the rod, just spare the rod, you spoil the child. There's a time for the seat of education to be stimulated a bit, if you know what I mean. And I think that's, so I want to be careful here because I know we all look at life from different perspectives. And there is one that was very, very offensive, and he could have had Onesimus executed. Now just ponder that a second. How many of you have that kind of authority over anybody? Now, I know Bill Cosby used to say jokingly, I brought you in, I can take you out. And I kind of like it as a comedy line, but the fact is I don't have that authority, right? I don't have the authority to sell somebody I don't like. Now, that's probably a good thing because some of us would have sold some people off already had we had that authority. And I certainly don't have the authority to strap somebody up to a post and beat them with a chain. Really had that authority, and he's been significantly wrong. And Paul is saying we want some lasting reconciliation. We want the real deal here. We want these hearts to be in tune as they should be. So now will Philemon, how do I want to say it, let go of his power options and his leverage, which is his legal right in that day, and pursue the Christian path of true reconciliation where he has a different thing. Now, Paul is old and wise. I believe that's down around verse 9. It is verse 9, where Paul refers to himself as, in the New American Standard, he says, Paul the aged. I don't know what your translation says, but he's been down the road. All are mine, all are soul, all are mine. But he wants it there voluntarily. That's what he wants. And so Paul is looking to have that same kind of love develop between Christians. That's a mutual, willing, voluntary love that chooses to be there. And I think it's pretty obvious there in John 3:16 that God does draw us through love, and that, Calvary and whatever other image you want to do. And that love can do what raw power can't do. So the authority in the home, well, used to be dads, had an iron fist, and they would rule tough. Back in the day, I don't know if this works so much nowadays, but back when you go back to the 70s and the 60s and the 50s, the women and the children didn't have a whole lot of options, and if Dad said it was my way or the highway. That's just the way it worked. And if you didn't get in line, you often heard that sound of the belt coming out of the belt loops really quick, and things. It wasn't that. It was more of an agreed upon arrangement. You go to work, you cover the overhead, and I'll stay at home and take care of the house. You get to be the boss. And, the kids were under some tyranny sometime, to say the least. Now, raw power can keep things together. Raw power kept a whole lot of things together for a whole long time. And then the kids hit 18. And they get old enough, maybe it was 21. They say, I ain't hanging around here. I've been around this place long enough. They're gone. They're out of there. And all of us know stories probably of the woman who hung on until the child left the house. She said, I'm done too. I've put up with this fool long enough. Raw power has some potential, but it doesn't bring hearts together and meld them together where two truly become one, and the family unit becomes what we all desire it to be. But love can do that. I'll throw it off It's really more of a learning process here. What can we learn from this? What can we learn? How can we grow? How can we become better Christians tomorrow than we were today? How can we continue the development? And it's through those situations where you get your opportunity. Now, I will say Bible classes are great, foundational. I like them. I think they're good. I think sermons are less effective, but this is the way we do it, so we'll have a sermon. But I think if you really want your ultimate effectiveness for spiritual development, then it's going to be when you're in the middle of the situation and you're asking, okay, what can I learn here? What are my options? What can I do? And there's all kinds of options out there. You know me, I'm not going to prescribe what anybody ought to be doing because I don't know all the facts in a particular case. But I know in every case, no matter how it unfolds, there is spirituality to be learned there. And I know the break in every case, I got heads on you here, the break in every case does not have to be permanent. But I know there's also a time to say I had to go to the doctor the third time to clean up what he brought home. I figured that was enough. I'd given him enough chances. And, I couldn't argue with that lady. She knew what was going on. I didn't. There's a time to go, I've been patient enough here. But it doesn't have to be permanent in every single case. The challenge is, can we grow through it? So Paul doesn't tell Philemon, just forget it. Just blow it off. It's nothing. It's no big deal. Don't you hate that when somebody dismisses what you're going through and just kicks you to the curb? And this is how we do it, incidentally, because I know everybody's sitting here going, well, I don't kick anybody to the curb. Yes, you do. We all do it. I do it. Somebody comes in and goes, sounds like you got a cold. How you doing, and as I start telling you, go, boy, let me tell you what, though. Last week, my cold, I had 102 fever. I couldn't, and it's that one-upping all the time. One-upping. Oh, you think you had a bad day, took a vacation, came back. See how we can minimize it? Paul could have said something like, I've been in more labors. I've been in imprisonments. I've been beaten times without number, often in danger of death. I received from the Jews 30 lashes. 3 times I was beaten with rods. I was stoned. 3 times I stripped naked. A night and a day I've spent in the deep. Believe me, you ain't got nothing on me. Let me tell you what real problems are. But he didn't do that, did he? He didn't dismiss Philemon's problem. This was a real problem for Philemon. And probably more so than we can grasp our head. How many other slaves did he have? What message was this sending to the other slaves? What was his peer group? What were his peers telling him? Now, if Onesimus was my slave, let me tell you what I'd do with him. What was the community environment like? What was the political environment like that he was acting in? And Paul doesn't just brush him off and say, it's no suggesting that no matter how somebody wrongs you and whatever they did to you, you're supposed to go back and try to reconcile it in everything and every way. Sometimes you need to let some people walk. But sometimes you need to ask, okay, how can we heal this and have a healthy relationship going forward? I'm totally comfortable letting you make that decision of which is which. I'm just telling you that both exist. So the faith changed things down in verse 16. The relationship changed fundamentally because now Philemon's not just a slave, but more than a slave, a beloved brother. Now again, this is going to be a little funny to us, but he can be both a slave and under Philemon's authority and still be a Christian. We're going, what? Wait a minute. If Onesimus is a Christian, doesn't he have to set him free? No, that's not the way it worked back then. Ephesians 6 does instruct slaves how to treat their masters. I believe that starts at verse 5 if you want to look at it. So love is going to be the new foundation here for Philemon, not profit. Because Onesimus was a piece of equipment. Onesimus was a profit producer if you could get the work out of him. And now, instead of looking at Onesimus just as a slave to be manipulated for profit, Now it's a whole new thing. That's tough. So Philemon faces some tough choices, doesn't he? In a new way. I mean, clearly see the past. That's pretty easy. And there probably will, no, we don't know this, so I'm speculating here. There was probably a little tension going on between Philemon and Onesimus before Onesimus decided to make a break and run. Now he's come back. Can they heal what was broken and make it work? So when the gospel creates family, those old labels, those lose their power somewhat. And now we got to figure out another way to go. Now it's doable. Kids do it all the time. I bet if we could take any of the two little kids around here, let's go forward just about 3 years from now. So it's going to be Reese and Jude. And there are going to be times where Reese and Jude come to mom or daddy and one of them's mad at the other. Going, somebody so took my whatever, right? And mom and daddy's going to say, it's going to be okay, just forget it, y'all go play. And just like somebody flipped a switch, they're, not every time, I'm sorry, but at times they're going to go, oh, okay. And they're going to forget it. And they're going to go back and play just like nothing ever happened. You've seen kids do it. Then we become adults. And all of a sudden, it's a whole new game, isn't it? Trick me once, shame on you. You ain't tricking me again. And we play by a different set. The old labels need to lose their power. That's taken us into a very difficult place in strained relationships. So he basically asked, do you love me? Can you accept Onesimus as a brother? Something like that. Nowadays, divorce is so cheap, they may not say that anymore. That's not a relationship. But he could say something like that. Well, I'd like to kill him. I'd like to beat the fool out of him, but then Paul would be mad at me. I'll just take him in and I'll make it work just to keep Paul happy. Is that real reconciliation? That's not, is it? He could just supervise him. Keep a real tight watch on him. He could do that. Maybe the old traditional ball and chain or something. Or he could say, okay, we're going to try this again. Let's see what happens. Ow. That happens. How many of us know couples where the marriage vows were violated and they said we'd rather reconcile and figure this out than divorce? And they did. And it works. It's really significant sacrifice. I know you're Christian. I know we've talked a lot. I know we've studied together. You've helped support my missionary journeys. And all of this has been really good. And now they're in a tight place, a really tight place. What's Philemon going to do now? This is when it gets hard. And this is where we really find out who's who. And Philemon doesn't know how it's going to unfold. He can have the best of intentions. Onesimus can still be an idiot. We just don't know enough. We just don't know enough. You know, there are some people that are just determined to cause trouble over and over and over and over. They think that's their validation, their power or something. God didn't promise them that it was going to be all roses and it's going to be all easy. It's hard. Especially when you have to go through those dark valleys. It's hard. It really is. But if you're in a situation where you judge it's worth the effort to go through, and you can bring about that true reconciliation. I'm not talking about just mere civility, but true reconciliation. That's great. That's an awesome reward for putting in the work. So I think Paul is optimistic because he knows how true Christian love behaves, and he knows Philemon. Now I wish I could tell you we had Philemon 2. And in Philemon 2, we learned that X, Y, and Z, but we don't. So we're kind of left with an unresolved story. I think there's a reason for that. This is purely my speculation. I think we are left with an unresolved story because God didn't intend to tell us a story. He intended to have us look at ourselves and our relationships and how we behave when we have been the one that is wronged. Can we learn to forgive as God forgives us? And think about that a second. I can never learn how to forgive in the same way God forgives. The question is, can we practice love like Jesus? Can we refuse to let sin have the last word? I know, there's so many little nuances here. We're talking about a relationship. Fact of the matter is, in a relationship, I only get one side of the vote, and you only get one side of the vote. If it's a difficulty in a marriage, I don't get to vote for her. I get to vote for me. I want this to work. I want this to, get through this, and I want everything to be great. And she may go, no way. I don't get to make all the votes. And there's 3 people, 4 people, 6 people involved. I still get one vote. It's complicated. It's not all as easy as it looks in a sermon. But as much as we can, we refuse to let sin have the last word. And if other people have the same goal we have, then we have some options we can work with. So I think Paul is really calling us to examine our hearts here. Reconciliation is risky. Somebody did me wrong once, they could do me wrong twice. Very possible. And Christ said, forgive sin how many times? Oh, didn't have to mention that 7 times 70 verse, did I? It is risky.